Welcome to part 2 of my series where I'm tier ranking all 256 types of Twinborn combinations from Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series. In this video, I'll be ranking 16 more Twinborn combinations, and just like last time, some of the names for these Twinborn types come from the Mistborn adventure game Alloy of Law rulebook, and other names were created by me and other users in the Exploring the Cosmere Discord server. If you want to help come up with Twinborn names for future videos in this series, make sure you join the Discord server. Alright, let's get into this tier ranking. The first Twinborn type for this video is Haze Dodger. Haze Dodgers can use Allomantic Bronze to hear Allomantic pulses, and they can use Ferrochemical Steel to store physical speed. This name comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and it says the reputation for Haze Dodgers is that they are skilled Allomancer hunters. I could see Haze Dodgers being really good in Scadrial law enforcement positions, where they can use their Allomantic Bronze to seek out criminal Allomancers. Once they sense Allomantic pulses, they can tap their Ferrochemical speed to rapidly catch up to the Allomancer. I could also see Haze Dodgers becoming mercenaries and letting people hire them to track down Allomancers. I think this is a pretty good combination of powers to have for either of those positions, but I don't think that either of these powers necessarily build on one another. So I think I'll be putting Haze Dodger in A tier for right now, and I might update this as we go on. The next Twinborn type is Mythwalker. Mythwalkers can use their Allomantic Cadmium to slow down time in a bubble around them, and they can use their Ferrochemical Duralumin to store connection. So yeah, I don't think this is necessarily a good combination of powers, like they don't really build on one another. But I think cadmium is a pretty interesting Allomantic power. Whenever you have that cadmium bubble around you, everything outside of that bubble from your perspective is going to look like it's going in rapid speed. But from somebody outside of the bubble looking in, it will just look like you're sitting extremely still and all of your movements are extremely slow. So if somebody had enough cadmium, they could just stay in a cadmium bubble for extended periods of time and have days upon days pass in the outside world. And then with the Ferrochemical Duralumin, the Mythwalker can store their connection. While the Mythwalker is storing that connection, they're not going to appear very charismatic to people. People aren't going to really want to be their friends. But once they're tapping their connection, they're going to be able to form friendships really quickly. And people are going to see them as much more charismatic. Their words are going to carry much more weight in social settings. I really don't think that these two powers build on each other in any way that makes this combination special. I'm just gonna put Mythwalker in B tier, middle of the road. Next up, we have Dreamcatcher. Dreamcatchers can use their Allomantic Chromium to wipe Allomantic reserves of a target. All they have to do is put their hand on somebody that's burning Allomantic metals, and they can burn their chromium, and the Allomantic reserves of that other person will vanish. They can also use their Ferrochemical Bronze to store wakefulness. So when they're actively storing their wakefulness, they'll go into like a coma basically, and then they can tap that wakefulness at a later time to stay up for extended periods of time. I think Dreamcatchers could be a great addition to a team of Allomancer hunters. Maybe they'd be good on a Scadrian SWAT team, for instance. This is another combination that the powers don't really enhance one another, so I'm gonna put Dreamcatchers also in B tier. I'm gonna put them below Mythwalker. And if I'm missing any good uses for these combinations, let me know down in the comments. Next up, we have Masker. Maskers can use their Allomantic Copper to hide Allomantic pulses, and they can use their Ferrochemical Chromium to store fortune. This name comes from the Mistborn adventure game, and the reputation of Maskers is that they are a blessing to any Allomancer crew. This is another type that would make a good support Twinborn for a team of Allomancers, because obviously they can use their copper to hide the Allomantic pulses that their teammates are creating, and they could also potentially increase the luck of not only themselves, but maybe their teammates as well. We don't really know enough about Ferrochemical Fortune yet to know if it would affect more than just the Ferrochemists themselves. Another benefit to burning Allomantic Copper is that it makes you immune to emotional allomancy. So even though these two powers don't really build on one another, I still think they're both really good powers to have. If I were lucky enough to be born a Twinborn and I happened to be a Masker, I would have no complaints. So I'm going to put Masker in A tier behind Haze Dodger. Next up, we have Blur. Blurs can use their allomantic bind alloy to speed up time, and they can use their ferrochemical steel to store physical speed. This name comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook. The reputation of Blurs is that they are inhumanly productive. So this is an example of two powers that really build on one another. Just a quick recap on how allomantic bind alloy works. The allomancer can burn their bind alloy and throw up a speed bubble around themselves. From their perspective, everything outside of the bubble looks like it's moving very slowly. But from the perspective of somebody outside of that speed bubble looking in, it looks like the allomancer is moving extremely fast. We see Wayne in Era 2 use allomantic bind alloy all the time. He'll throw up a speed bubble, change his clothes, and then drop the speed bubble. And from other people's perspectives, it looks like he instantly changed into a different outfit. He also uses it for combat purposes quite a bit. Now imagine tapping ferrochemical speed while you already threw up a bind alloy speed bubble. You're gonna move insanely fast. I could see this helping you preserve bind alloy. You wouldn't have to have your bind alloy speed bubble up as long. I also think that you could throw up your bind alloy speed bubble and store in your steel mind while that bubble's up, and store all that extra speed that that bind alloy bubble's giving you. So you could probably rapidly fill up a steel mind much quicker than you would without that bind alloy speed bubble. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to put Blur in Busted. Those two powers build on each other so well. Next up, we have Scarab. Scarabs have the power to burn duralumin to enhance the current metals being burned allomantically, and they also can use their ferrochemical copper to store memories. Their allomantic duralumin doesn't give them any benefit because they can't burn any other allomantic metals. So they're basically just a glorified copper fairing. They were lucky enough to be born a Twinborn, but very unlucky at the same time because they can't use their allomantic power for anything. So Scarabs are going to have to go in D tier. Next up, we have Mosquito, which is another glorified fairing. They can use their allomantic duralumin once again to enhance current metal burned, but since they can't burn other allomantic metals, it's useless to them. And they can use their ferrochemical steel to store physical speed. They are the gnats of the Twinborn world. They're also going D tier, but I think I'm going to put them ahead of Scarab. I would rather have ferrochemical steel than ferrochemical copper. Next up, we have Flicker. Flickers can use their allomantic Electrum to reveal their future, and they can use their ferrochemical zinc to store mental speed. The name Flicker comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have the reputation of having the fastest reaction times in the world. So I think this is a pretty good combination. When you burn allomantic Electrum, you reveal your own future by seeing Electrum shadows come out from your center of self, and they go and do different things. And they're showing you the different possible future actions you could take. And you couple that with ferrochemical zinc, where you can increase your mental speed, basically raising your IQ in a way, and you could calculate which would be the best path to follow. I think being a Flicker and using both of your abilities at once would be very similar to burning ATM. For instance, when you're in a fight, you could quickly analyze your Electrum shadows and determine which one is going to cause you harm. Let's say you could see which one is going to get punched in the face, or which one is going to stab your enemy in the stomach. And you could quickly determine which path is the best one to take. Yeah, so I don't think that this is busted necessarily, but I think it is a really good combination. I think I'll put it in S tier. Next up, we have Retrospect. Retrospects can burn allomantic gold to reveal their past self, and they can use ferrochemical zinc to store mental speed. This is almost like the opposite of the Flicker that we just ranked, because when you burn gold, instead of seeing possible future actions that you'll take, you'll see different versions of your past self. Let's read a bit more about this on the copper mine quickly. A person burning gold is able to see a hallucination of who the user could have been, known as a gold shadow. While active, an augur can see through both pairs of eyes and think both sets of thoughts. Due to the emotional stress associated with seeing one's alternate past, gold is not a very useful metal. Therefore, touching the gold shadow while burning gold causes unpleasant side effects. Each time an augur burns gold, they see a different image as it changes depending on their current situation. I think that this combination would be really cool to experiment with to see how storing your mental speed versus tapping your mental speed changes your gold shadow, but I don't really see how this could be useful in your day-to-day life or in combat or anything like that. Let me know down in the comments if you guys think that there would be any practical use for this at all. I really don't see it myself. I'm gonna put retrospect in C tier. Next up, we have Iron Stomach. Iron stomachs can use their allomantic iron to pull metals, and they can use their ferrochemical bend alloy to store energy. They store this energy in the form of calories and nutrition. I don't see these two powers building on one another in any way. They're both kind of cool powers to have, but yeah, since they don't build on each other, I'm gonna have to put this in probably B tier. Yeah, it's going B tier. Next up, we have Heat Sink. Heat sinks can use their allomantic iron to pull on metal, and they can use their ferrochemical brass to store warmth. Yeah, so this is another one where I don't really see their powers building on each other. They are both pretty good powers to have on their own. I mean, with brass, it has a lot of utility uses. You would never get hot. Even if you're walking through a desert with the sun beating down on you, you could just be storing all of that extra body heat in a brass mind. And then in the wintertime, you could be walking through a frigid cold blizzard and be drawing that warmth out of your brass mind, and you would feel perfectly fine. This also has to go in B tier for me. I'm gonna put it behind Iron Stomach. Next, we have Guardian, which is another Twinborn with the allomantic iron ability to pull on metals. They also can use ferrochemical steel to store physical speed. This name comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook. Guardians have the reputation of being tremendously popular bodyguards. I could definitely see them being really good bodyguards because you can just pull any metal projectile towards yourself and away from whoever you're protecting, thanks to your allomantic iron. And their ferrochemical speed would let them jump in front of the person they're protecting rapidly and block them from any potential strikes or projectiles. They could also rapidly get to the attacker and neutralize them. So these two powers don't really enhance one another in any way, but they are a pretty good combination. I'm gonna put Guardian at the top of A tier. All right, now we have Sooner. Sooners can use their allomantic pewter to increase physical strength, and they can use their ferrochemical zinc to store mental speed. The name Sooner comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have the reputation of seeing and exploiting any opportunity. I think this is one of my favorite Twinborn combinations. They would be so good in a fight. It reminds me of Sherlock Holmes from one of the movies where he's in a bare knuckles fight. He rapidly calculates a bunch of different fighting moves to use against his opponent, and then he executes them in rapid succession. And that's exactly what Sooners would be able to do. And thanks to their allomantic pewter, each of their strikes that they successfully land will really pack a punch and probably be breaking ribs. So pewter is actually my favorite allomantic metal. It not only increases your physical strength and toughness, it also makes you physically quicker, and it increases your dexterity. So this combination enhances you both mentally and physically. I think Sooners would excel in pretty much any aspect of life. I mean, every task that I can think of requires either mental capabilities or physical capabilities. So yeah, I think you'd just kind of be a superhuman. I'm putting Sooner in Busted. I'm gonna put it above Blur even. Next up, we have Evershot. Evershots can use their allomantic steel to push on sources of metal, and they can use their ferrochemical Electrum to store determination. Whenever you store your determination in the Electrum mind, you go into a depressed state. But whenever you're tapping that determination at a later time, you are gonna feel on top of the world. You're gonna feel like you can do anything, accomplish anything. Coupling that enhanced determination with allomantic steel, I could see Evershots taking really crazy risks, like when they're soaring through the air, and that might even get them killed. I'm gonna put Evershot in B tier. They don't really build on one another. I think I'll put Evershot at the top of B tier, and I'm actually gonna move Mythwalker back a bit. I'm gonna move Mythwalker to the top of C tier because I don't see the allomantic cadmium coming in use very often. All right, next we have Nightwatcher. Nightwatchers can use their allomantic tin to increase their senses, and they can use their ferrochemical bronze to store wakefulness. Nightwatchers would be great to have on your team as a scout. Their tin would let them see details at great distances, and they'd be able to stay on watch for days at a time potentially, as long as they had enough wakefulness stored up. I don't think that this is a great combination though. The two powers don't really build on each other. I'm gonna put Nightwatcher in A tier, and I'm actually gonna drop Masker down to the top of B tier. The last Twinborn combination for this video is Bouncer. Bouncers can use their allomantic zinc to riot the emotions of others, and they can use their ferrochemical iron to store physical weight. Iron is a pretty great ferrochemical metal to be able to store in, because when you're actively storing, you can actually fall from really high distances. Since your mass is decreased but your surface area remains the same, wind resistance will actually slow your fall to the point where you can land safely at pretty much any distance. And then whenever you tap that iron, you'll be increasing your mass, so you'll be harder to move, but you'll also hit harder. Couple that with allomantic zinc and you could riot the emotions of others. I don't really see these being a great combination, to be honest. It might be a fun combination to have if you like to go to heavy metal concerts and join the mosh pits. You could make yourself very heavy so you're hard to move. You could riot all the excitement and the anger of those around you moshing. But yeah, I'm gonna rank it. I think I'm gonna put it all the way at the top of B tier. All right, so there's my ranking of these 16 metals. Here's the combined tier list from all the Twinborn types ranked in parts 1 and 2. I think I'm probably gonna do 16 parts to this series. In the 16th part, I'll add all the compounder Twinborn types, and I'll also be moving around the different Twinborn types as needed to make my final tier list. I plan on posting another tier list for this series every week, so if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you know when I post the next part. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my placements down in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, consider supporting the channel by becoming a patron or a channel member. You'll also get access to all kind of perks. That's it for this video, guys. I'll see you in part 3.